Hello all, Dr. Alejandro here, and today I am back to finally continue my tutorial series on modding 7 Days to Die. Today we're going to be discussing something very, very simple, but it's something that could really add a lot of extra fun to your game, something that we really like to use in my streams, which is naming things in the game. It's very, very easy to change the display names of different items and zombies. As you can see on the screen here, we have the cop zombie, Mr. Coffee and Donuts. So in my stream, I have a channel point redemption where people can redeem that, and then they get to name something in the game, and I change it for them. And then we get to see it all the time. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about here is getting the HP bar up, because that is an important one. If you want to name the actual entities, the zombies and such, you won't see the names if the HP bars aren't up. So I want to show you guys quickly how to do that. Some people use a mod for it. I just do it manually because it is literally changing one word in the code to do it. I changed my view settings to extra large icons just so it'll be able to be read on screen. I normally hate having my things like this, but we'll be able to show you. So to get the HP bars, if you're not using a mod for it, you just want to do it simply on your own, you go to where you have 7 Days to Die installed. So for me, it's installed on my D drive, program, Steam apps, common, 7 Days to Die. And then from there, we go into the data folder. It's data, then we go into config, and then XUI. And then you have 3 of these XML files here. The one we need to open up is the windows.xml. And that gives us this wonderful giant block of code text, which if you know XML, you can probably read it. Otherwise, it's going to be hard. But the easy way to do this is you do a little search, type the word God mode, and the first thing that'll come up is this window target bar, controller target bar, visibility equals God mode. This will normally say God mode. So this is what happens is if you are in a game and you turn God mode on, you'll see the HP bars. If you take that God mode and change this visibility from God mode to always, which you can even just copy and paste from right next to it, then the HP bars will always be on. That is, unless someone's changing the look of the HP bars, a lot of mods that bring up the HP bar is literally just using the mod to change this variable to always. But because it's just a single word, I do it myself most of the time. I haven't really bothered with mods for it. If 7 Days to Die updates, I go back into the windows.xml and change that word. But that'll get those bars up for you. And that's the first part of this. Now we're going to talk about the localization files and how you can actually set those names and have them show up in game. So you can have a lot of really fun names in here. One, again, as I said, you can rename the entity. So we have Lieutenant Dan, Mr. Sanders, Coffee and Donuts. And then because I'm also a 7 Days to Die streamer, we do have a lot of things named after fellow 7 Days to Die streamers because a lot of my community members also watch a lot of other people who do 7 Days to Die. So the Lumberjacks are Jonah Burgess. We have Biddy Woods. We have Love Shack's Tickle Stick was the rename for the Stun Baton. Skittles Brush for Skittlebutt as the paintbrush. So you can name all these different things. You can even do some other really fun things, such as if we find a piece of chrysanthemum on the ground, like over this way. We even had the chrysanthemum named to DD1GGs, who is a 7 Days to Die streamer who's known for doing really hard challenges and not dying. They wanted to name DD1GG after the grass, but the grass doesn't have anything show up for it, so we chose chrysanthemum instead as what we were going to name, just to show DD1GG is harder to deal with than grass. So what do we need to start naming the different things in the game and to change that localization file? Well, first things first, we do basically need a blank mod that we can fill in with things. Now, I have one. I'm going to work with what I've already been doing so far. But in the description of this video, there will be a Google Drive link for a blank mod folder. In that folder will just be essentially a blank mod that you can work with. So it's called blank mod. and I will show you what's in it once we get there. But one thing I want to discuss first is the naming of your mods. The way 7 Days to Die works is when you have your mods folder, it will read in the mods in order. So if you have a mod that needs to be read first, you want something in there that'll make sure it's at the beginning of the folder. What Kane and a lot of others do is for things that need to be loaded first, they will start the name with a 0. I have a bunch of different mods in this folder for all different things that I do. But yes, a lot of them will start the names with 0 to make sure that it's at the beginning of the folder. For me, a lot of the Twitch integration or naming mods, they might be dependent on mods that come before them in the folder. And if there's things that come before them in the folder, then you want it at the end. So for me, a lot of my stuff, like my Twitch integration mods or my naming mods, have the letter Z in front. So it's Z Twitch int mod or Z named. And the purpose of this is just to make sure it's at the end of the folder list. This way, if I have other mods in that introduce zombies or items or such, those mods will load first, and then my naming mod will load in. If you do it too early, such as you're running Darkness Falls and there are all the special zombies in there, and for some reason your naming folder is before the folder that introduces those zombies into the game, the localization in your mod won't be able to see them. So it's going to skip over them. So that's why when I do things that are meant to make use of previous things, I put a Z at the front of the name just to make sure it ends up later. So going inside, so just like the blank mod folder, if you open up this folder, it will have a config folder, mod XML, mod info.xml. These two are literally just things that you can use to put information in for yourself. So when I started doing the naming, it was originally for my friend Jimmy Bo 1000. He wanted to name a few things in game, so I wrote the quick localization mod for him. And then I started doing naming in my own stream because I realized I wanted to do that for my own games. So I never actually changed the mod.xml and mod info.xml. Neither of those actually matter in terms of this. So this still says we're in alpha 19 and it has the old names in there, but those don't actually really come into play. Inside this config folder, though, is where most of what you're doing will be. So the folder structure of your mod has to match where things are in the folder structure of the game. So in the base game itself, in the data folder, config, everything in most of the things that you're able to control easily in the game, all the XML files are in the config folder. So because of this, you will need your mod, config, and then things inside of there. If you're making a mod to change other things, like if you want to make a mod that changes the HP bar to make it always active, you would need a mod folder, config, XUI folder, and then a Windows XML inside of there that you're editing. So this is why there is that current setup in how the mod folder is structured and why is the config folder in there. Going back to our Z named folder, going inside the config, all there is localization.txt. Because this is all you need to name things. Now, what you will want to do to make it a little easier on yourself is if you're naming things from the vanilla game, you can go into where you have 7 Days to Die installed and open up that localization file as well, which is what I tend to do. So I already have it opened up here, and this is currently my mod with everything that's been added into it, with all the different names of things we've been naming. And the naming structure for the localization is pretty easy, especially if you're dealing with English, because how this functions is you have a key. The key goes back the name and the code. So like the spider zombies are zombie spider. The fat Hawaiian zombies are zombie fat Hawaiian. Everything has a name in the code, and the localization file attaches that name and the code to something you give it. Now, I could explain a little more about some of the things. So file is where it belongs to, like zombies are part of the entity classes files, items are part of the items files. This corresponds to the XML they're inside of. But if you're just renaming things in the game and not trying to add new things to the game, knowing this doesn't matter as much. The way we actually do this naming and the easy way to do it is We open up the base localization file of the game. This has everything listed in there. And if you're doing other languages, you might need to go out further. So I only keep the English because I only care about the English localization. But if you go further, there's German, Latin, French, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Polish, Brazilian, whatever language you're working with, you will need to make sure you go out that far in what you're copying. So say I want to rename Zombie Arlene. Let's go ahead. Let's do a search for Zombie Arlene. You can even just search for Arlene because the zombies will always be zombie and then a name after it. So if you know the actual names of the zombies, it helps a lot there. And what I will do, because I'm working with English, is I will just go ahead. I'm just going to highlight that. I'm going to copy that. We'll go into my localization file, paste it, and now we can change this to whatever we want it to be. Let's see, what would we want to name Arlene here? Here we go. Jawoodle's Girl. That's what we'll name Arlene. Jawoodle's Girl. And then you can save your localization file. Here we are back in the game. Something to know about this is you're making changes to mods. The mods load when you load into the world. So if you make a change to a mod file, like the localization or something else, and you save it and you're still in game, it won't change at all. You have to exit out of the game. You only have to exit to the main menu because every time you load back into the game, it checks the mods to see if anything's changed and will load that in at the same time. So you don't have to fully exit the game, but you have to exit to the main menu and then you'll be able to load back in. Now, in this world, I put myself in God mode, easy to control. And if you are in debug menu, which for folks who might not know, if you're playing on a solo world, you can just press F1, type in DM, and debug mode will turn on. If you're playing on a server or a friend's world, you need permissions to do that. But if you're just playing by yourself, easy enough to do. So if you're in debug mode, you can click F6 to open up the spawner menu. This lets you spawn whatever you want in the game. Normally, this look at you is clicked off. So when you spawn something in, it'll be turning away from you. But I don't really want that. I'd rather have the thing look at me. So I'll click look at you. So now what spawns, and it'll spawn where the reticle is pointing. So it'll spawn at the middle of your screen, whatever it's pointing at. I can go ahead down here, click Zombie Arlene. And all of a sudden, we have Zombie Arlene with Jawoodle's Girl as the name on the HP bar. Doing this naming stuff is one of the simplest things you can do for the game to change things up a little bit, but add a little more fun for yourself. So if you are using the blank mod that I'm going to put in the description, that won't have the text file you need, but I'll show you what you have to do to make it work. So here we are in our blank mod folder. This is what will be in that blank mod folder if you download it. The mod XML, mod info XML, I already spoke about how that doesn't really matter. You won't need to do anything with it. It does have information in there for me for something I made in the past. I realized I forgot to remove that before I created this and put it up. I made this blank mod folder and put it in one of my original episodes for modding back in Alpha 19. And I never changed it. And I feel like I'm just going to leave it there because these don't actually matter. But if we go into the config folder, there's this blank.xml. Now, if you're just doing naming stuff, you can delete this blank XML. This is here just so that if you are going to try to edit things in the game following any of my other modding exercises from older modding episodes or ones that be coming in the future, you can use this blank XML to do that. If you do, you'll change the blank to whatever files you're trying to mod. So if you're trying to change entity classes, you'll change it to the entity class.xml. If you're trying to change items, you'll change it to items.xml. If you're trying to change a bunch of things, you can make copies of this, change the names, and go in and edit them there. But what you need to do for localization with this blank mod folder is just click New Text Document and name it Localization. Now you have localization.txt, a blank text document that you can fill in with what I showed earlier. And then you can also just delete this blank XML, not needed for what we're doing here. So your mod will just have this localization file, and you fill it in with the things you want to, and especially easy if you're just trying to name things from the original game, because you just copy and paste what you need and go from there. It's the simplest way to do this. And again, it allows you to add some extra flavor to your game in a really simple way that makes the experience be a little more fun or personable or just whatever you want it to be. So this was my first episode back in modding 7 Days to Die. I'll be doing a bunch more where I'm going to cover things that people are interested in. Also, if people have things that they would like to see covered, you put it in the comments below, and I'll make sure to see if it's something that's simple enough for early videos, or maybe it has to wait till later on. I'm going to be sticking to doing simple things at first, these early episodes, and then I will try and go a little more advanced as time goes on. But I'm going to be continuing to make more of these because I've had a lot of folks asking me about modding 7 days, and I figure doing tutorial series like this just gives people the information they're going to need to start messing around with the game in a way to make it more perfect for them. That's what got me in the modding. I just wanted to change little things about the game to make it feel better for me, so I started doing it. And then I enjoyed it, so I started doing more and more. And that's how it goes. And I like it if folks have the ability to do that themselves. If you have an idea of, oh, I want my game to be like this, I want people to have the ability to do that themselves. So that's what we're going for here. But I hope you all enjoyed this video on modding 7 Days to Die. I will be back in the near future to show off more little modding things for this game. But I am Dr. Alejandro. Hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.